Ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how you doing? I'm Brother Melvin, and once again, I'm here to talk about the water principle. And if you're not familiar with the water principle is it's a foundation that's built on peace and making a life a better place to be in. And most of us, we were taught, particularly like me, when I grew up in Overtown, and one of the number one fundamental things that we learned is you fight fire with fire. And they're obviously not talking about physical fire. They're talking about anger against anger. Or somebody say something disrespectful to you, you say something back disrespectful. Or somebody's coming at you or trying to hit you, you hit them back or you hit them first. And that is the principle of fighting fire with fire. But just knowing basically how fire works, when fire is on the scene, it typically burns up everything, which is why when firefighters show up to a house that's burning, they don't show up with torches, they show up with water. Why? Because water puts out fire. So we're not talking about physical water, we're talking about a different type of mental and verbal water. Meaning if somebody says something crazy to you, like, oh man, them some messed up shoes, or your hair look crazy, or something like that. Your first thing or your first reaction, if you grew up like I grew up, and a large percentage of people, not just people from the projects or certain parts of a city, this kind of is a very general thing where people have been taught to fight fire with fire. And so if somebody said something disrespectful to you, you're saying something back disrespectful for them. And what usually happens in these incidents when people fight fire with fire or they say something back to somebody else disrespectful, it escalates. And that's typically what fire does. It escalates where a little teeny fire starts and before you know it, the whole house is on fire. Well, it's kind of the same way when you are literally arguing with somebody who started out by saying something negative to you and you responded saying something very negative to them. And thus the fire has escalated. And typically when this fire escalates, it can get really ugly really fast, and somebody could end up in a hospital or maybe even underground because just like that, because you fought fire with fire. And you have some people who have anger issues, they get so angry, they blank out and do things, they have trouble remembering that they did because they don't remember it. Because once when you get to that extreme levels of anger, you blank out and you don't even have the ability to remember what you did. And I've actually met people who was going to court and couldn't testify against themselves because they simply did not remember. So what do we do? And what did I learn about this water principle? Well, let's start from the beginning of what the water principle is. The water principle is a way of not just speaking to other people in a very nice, in a very calm, in a very positive manner. It's also about the way you live, the way you think, the way you do everything you do, actually. And one of the principles of the water principle is understanding who you are. What does that mean? Understanding who you are and what you are is incredibly important to the water principle, right? So the water principle, like I just said, is about saying very positive things to other people, even when they say something very negative to you. But it's also understanding why would you want to do that? Why do you want to say something positive to somebody who said something negative to you? Because if you throw water on the fire that they just brought to you, you will put out the fire. And so what happens when you put out a fire? The person who potentially could have been an enemy has now became a friend, or at least maybe even an ally, which is, you may not be friends, but that person will help you in dire needs when you're not even knowing that person may or may not help you. And that is one of the basic principles